You want to talk, Cliff? Brian Harvey's channel messaged me asking if I wanted to talk. Brian Harvey likes everything on his own terms. I suspect he's like that with everyone that he deals with. It's always on his terms. My understanding is that he was like that when he was in East 17. It always had to be on his terms. I wonder why he wants to talk now. Of course, nobody on YouTube will have an opinion about that. Whether I should talk to him or whether I shouldn't talk to him. Nobody's made a comment underneath his comment. Nobody appears to have said anything about it at all. Do I want to talk to a man who's said he'll stab me in the neck if I knock on his door? Do I want to talk to a man I don't like? I don't know what it is about the Cliff thing. I don't hide. Hello, I'm here. I don't hide. People make out I hide. I wasn't hiding in Parliament Square in 2013 while me and the rest of my MI5 colleagues were setting up Brian Harvey. Of course, I've recently stated that I think that event was mostly about me and not about Brian Harvey. That's not a new conclusion that I've come to. I mean, I wondered that on the day. I introduced myself to Bill Maloney as Cliff. I introduced myself to everyone there as Cliff. Brian Harvey included. And somebody called Lee Moo made a comment on my last video telling me that I could be seen in the mirror. I love mirrors. People should look into them more often. Look in the mirror. Instead of projecting outwards to everybody else. He informed me that I could be seen in the mirror. Well, I can also be seen in the footage of Brian Harvey's MI5 setup in 2013. I mean, I knew there was a film going on. In my opinion, what was going on at Parliament Square was filmmaking. It was not a protest. And you can see me in close-up, speaking. And in case anybody hadn't noticed, I also spent 40 days and 40 nights camped in the car park of the Tavistock Centre, in a tent. Who else was at it? Karma Jane was also at it. Why doesn't he show his face? I don't know. I've got this weird idea that victims of certain crimes have a right to anonymity. You know, childhood sexual offences, rape. They have a right to anonymity. Because there's a lot of weird people out there in the world who might take advantage of somebody if they had that information about them. These sort of crimes leave people quite vulnerable. In fact, there's a number of cases of police officers who've deliberately targeted vulnerable people. And taken advantage of them. Brian Harvey's also referred to me as being a no one, unimportant. That's very nice. That's how, I don't know, 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 That's how paedophiles and rapists think about their victims, that they're unimportant and no one. Thinking of somebody as being unimportant and no one allows the perpetrator to carry out the crimes. Murderers think of their victims as no one, unimportant. Why is Brian Harvey? You want to talk now? I wonder if it's got anything to do with me going and speak to John Wedger. We had a very interesting chat, me and John Wedger. I'd love another chat with him, actually. I'd also love a chat with Bill Maloney. Don't know if I'm that bothered about talking to Brian Harvey. I've said it before, and I don't say it to wind him up, but he's really very irrelevant in what goes on in my life. And what goes on in my life has been going on since 1988, really. The good news is my rucksack arrived. I didn't go and get it today. I was informed quite late today that my rucksack had arrived, and I've got a bit of a journey to go and get it. But interestingly as well, I got a telephone call from trainee detective constable Vincent Cam. Hello, Vincent. Apparently Vincent doesn't know what my YouTube channel is, even though the police in Plymouth were going around passing my social media addresses around to all and sundry, which would of course be a criminal offence and against data protection law. Vincent doesn't seem to have my social media addresses. I'm not sure I believe Vincent. And Vincent has already shown himself to be quite hostile. If you're a victim of crime and you try and report crime, the person that you speak to is supposed to be dealing with it. You would kind of hope, I guess, that they would be understanding that you're actually a victim of crime. Not only am I a victim of crime, I'm also a victim to a cover-up of crime for a very long period of time. Anyway, I'm wondering why Brian Harvey wants to talk now. Of course, a conversation with him would be absolutely pointless. There's no truth comes out of his mouth, ever. And he would defend all the things that he's guilty of. He'd want to turn it all around onto me, make it about me, attacking me. I'm a man who has looked at himself, and I've looked at my own life. Brian Harvey's incapable of looking at himself and his own life. I'm also wondering about trainee detective Vincent Cam. Why now? The Queen's died. There's a lot of focus on the royal family at the moment. And I'm a bit of a nutter. The state knows I'm a bit of a nutter. I want to burgle Kenneth Kendall in revenge for what he did to me in a public toilet with a group of other homosexuals. I've escaped out of 2 prisons. I've done lots of crazy stuff in my life. I'm not very happy that I first tried to report incidents that have affected my whole life to the police in 1988, and I was prevented from doing so. Vincent Can was very, trainee detective Vincent Can was very, very keen to find out when I might be coming to London. There's a funeral taking place soon, right? And I'm definitely a security risk to that funeral. I definitely have it within me to go and make a massive scene somewhere. They know that about me. I think I've mentioned to people about the prison officer at Her Majesty's Prison, Grendon, who came and latched onto me when I got quite angry about the fact that I'd tried to report those who'd abused me in childhood a number of times, and the prison was preventing me from doing so. Of course, Her Majesty's Prison, Grendon has that to hide also. It's got a lot of dirty secrets it wants to hide, including that, including not allowing people to report serious crime. I'm fairly sure he gave his name as Pete Best. I could have made that up, of course. Pete Best, of course, was in the Beatles. He's the one that got kicked out or the one that left or something. He was a prison officer and a former Metropolitan Police officer who was at the Brixton riots. We talked about that for a while, a number of times. He's also talked to me about Buddhism and Taoism in particular. And he introduced me to a book called Holy Blood, Holy Grail. He made lots of pointed remarks to me. I felt like I was being warned to shut my mouth about things back then. And then I was released to a probation hostel. Still under the control of the state. The state could send me back to prison any time it liked while I was on probation. And then I had a massive seduction campaign from a member of probation staff who worked in the hostel called Madeline. Madeline broke the rules and Madeline encouraged me to break rules. She tried to lead me astray. I'm only human. Sometimes quite weak. But I didn't break the rules willingly, really. She had to try very hard. She latched onto the book that I was reading, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and told me that she'd been a theology student at Oxford University. She knew all about Holy Blood, Holy Grail and all the things in the book. And she used to take me around London, point out all the Freemasonry stuff in London. Took me to see a film called The Last Temptation of Christ. It's all a bit of theatre, really. But then Grendon does love its actors and drama therapy. Because I was abused in childhood. I've tried lots and lots of things to set myself free. From how that's made me feel. I've tried alcohol, I've tried drugs, I've tried sex, I've tried crime. I've tried religion, spirituality. Of course, strictly speaking, we are all spiritual beings. I've spent a lot of time locked in cells, or being in a cell, with lots of time to reflect on things. That's a luxury that many people, honest people, don't have. They don't have time. Why are you here? What is the meaning of your existence? Ask yourself. What is your purpose? There's a rabbit hole you can go down. I've been down that rabbit hole. Seems like one of life's tragedies to me, that people don't have the time to ask themselves, why are they here? What is the meaning of their existence? Everybody's too busy going to work, under pressure, stressed, paying bills, trying to get by. Just seems no time in the day to ask ourselves, why are we here? What is our purpose? I've had the luxury of asking myself that. If I was going to make a complaint, I'd say there's been times when I've had a little too much time on my hands. But we can all find something to moan about. I hate cats. So funny. I met another similar looking cat in Torquay. I had a little holiday on a holiday park, and there was this stray cat. Absolutely gorgeous it was. That was also a gunmetal grey cat. It didn't look too dissimilar from the one I encountered today. And I befriended the cat and I let it into my room or my apartment, and I fed it. I let it sleep in the room if it was about. I loved that cat. Homeless and unwanted, getting by. I treated myself the other day. I don't usually like jewellery. Previously I've only worn one piece of jewellery, and that would be something called a meditation ring. I lost it a while back in Plymouth. I've never been able to replace it, and I miss it. But when I was a child, my grandmother, maybe a Welsh witch, was a very devout Baptist. When I was very young, she constantly bought me these. If you watch it for too long, I might hypnotise you. Look away now. Don't look at it. Look away, don't look. Look away now. Look at the pendant, look at the pendant. It's St. Christopher. She kept buying me St. Christophers. St Christopher, of course, is the patron saint of travellers. In some respects, I think my grandmother might have been a wise woman. We're all on a journey, and I suspect that even at a very early age, she knew mine would be a difficult one. Been visiting a lot of churches recently. Spirituality plays a big part in my life. I'm not a Christian. Whenever I speak to Christians, they tell me that they believe in God. I never used to believe in God. I don't believe in God. I know God exists, but not in the Christian sense. When you say that, people think of it in the Christian sense, usually. Or at least the people I meet seem to take that in the Christian sense. I wonder what it is about Christians that they only believe in God. I've not encountered a Christian who's told me that they know God exists. And yet I do know God exists. Yeah. I was looking to get some more spirituality in my life after I've been set up for kidnapping and firearms offences back in 1994. I knew what that event was about. I kidnapped a member of the Royal Irish Regiment, which was commanded by Prince Andrew. Of course, I didn't kidnap him, he kidnapped me, really. Let's not argue about that. John James Sheridan. And then I encountered two police firearms units who threatened to kill me outside Brixton Police Station. And they could quite easily have done that. Nobody would have batted an eyelid. Might have made the local paper. Might have got into some of the bigger papers if people were talking about bringing in new laws. You know? I don't even think it made the local paper, that event. Nobody made the connection, of course, that there I was kidnapping a member of the Royal Irish Regiment. This is the States version. When between 1988 and 1990 I talked about grooming and sexual offences and Prince Andrew. Nobody made a connection between Prince Andrew and my kidnapping a member of the Royal Irish Regiment, except me. I was going to say something about my spiritual journey. And God and Christianity. I'm definitely more of a Buddhist, really. You could describe me as a Gnostic Christian. If you have to label. Mary Magdalene's very important in my life. think I've said that before. And I also mentioned St. Peter quite a long time ago, that he'd been crucified upside down as per his request. St. Peter's a fascinating character. He denied Christ 3 times and was crucified upside down. And I visited a church recently that's called St. Peter and Mary Magdalene. I went back there today to do a video. I was told it would be open till 4 o'clock. And I got there at 3 and the doors were closed. Anyway, apparently it's open tomorrow. Come down and see me if you like. Of course, recently I also visited, my life, visit St. David's Church in Exeter, which is right next to the cathedral. What a beautiful building that is. Consecrated in 1065. And I took some photographs in there. I met a nice chap in there who was charging his phone and sitting very quietly at the back while I went round taking photographs, and then we had a very interesting chat. I hope he's alright. Nice chap. Interesting conversation. And a couple of the photographs I took were some scripture on plaques behind the altar. One of them mentions how Jesus was crucified and then descended into hell, where he was, after 3 days, resurrected and ascended into heaven. The person who mentions that in the Bible, and it's very early on, it's a piece of scripture that's very early on in Christian history, was St. Peter. I'm liking St. Peter. The man who planted trees. It's a story. It's an allegorical story. It's also not a true story. The story is about a man in Spain who lives up in the mountains, and a walker discovered him one day, bumped into him on the path, and the man who planted trees took him back to his hut and fed him, let him stay the night. And the man hung around for a while and watched the man who planted trees collect acorns, sort the acorns, soak them, and then he'd go out planting them after he tended his flock of sheep. And he did that every day of his life. And years later, the traveller heard that there was a miracle in Spain, that the barren wastelands had been turned into forests, and rivers that had dried up had returned. All the birds and all the creatures had returned. So a dry, barren wasteland had been turned into something beautiful again. And he knew that it was all the work of the man who planted trees. Of course, the man who planted trees, if we're going to think about it, is God. Everybody thinks Christian when they hear that word. Do they? I don't know. I assume. Sorry, excuse me for assuming. God created the heavens and the earth and everything on the earth. So therefore God created trees. And the trees that God created have self-seeded over time. So they perpetuate themselves. And they do that without the interference of man. We don't need to get involved in that at all. So strictly speaking, really, the man who planted trees was God. I'll have a tree narrative. Saw a lorry today in a car park outside. It was full of cut down trees. Coincidence. Synchronicity. Genuinely think I need some legal assistance when I go to meet trainee Detective Constable Vincent Cam. I've had 2 conversations with him now. Or 2 conversations with somebody calling themselves trainee Detective Constable Vincent Cam. And he's shown himself to be a man who's not after truth. Already. I'm trying to tell him a truth and he's not interested in truth. It makes me very sad. Shame on you, trainee Detective Constable Vincent Cam. I just paused and I realised that it's 32 minutes 15 seconds. I'm like, do I sandbag and waffle and make this 33 minutes 33 seconds to play into a narrative? There's a lot of that goes on in my life. People playing into narratives. Anyway, sorry, that was a long waffle and I probably said absolutely jack. Right? Well done if you sat through that. Could do with some support, really. Someone is watching this and looking for stuff they can twist.